February 6, 1944, 04:17 a.m. Soviet Captain Dmitry Volkov froze behind the shattered church wall. Before him lay the encircled Vitebsk in the pre-dawn gloom. His company, 287 men strong, had orders to assault the German stronghold. A simple task. One isolated German soldier, maybe two, against almost 300 Soviet fighters. But Volkov already felt it in his gut. Something wasn't right. The silence was too absolute, too calculated. And then, at 04:23 a.m., a single shot. Not the chaotic fire of panic, a precise, almost surgical crack. Volkov's best machine gunner, Sergeant Petrov, slumped to the ground, headshot from 156 yards away. The next 72 hours would teach Volkov that numbers become meaningless when precision becomes a psychological weapon. Private Bruno Sutkus, 19 years old, a Lithuanian-German sniper from the 196th Grenadier Regiment, 68th Infantry Division, lay in the ruins of a destroyed farmhouse 219 yards northwest of the Soviet forward position. He had been observing the company for 48 hours, every movement, every pattern, every weakness. In his sniper's log, one of the few that would survive the war, a number was already recorded: 187 confirmed kills since August 1943. But this operation would be different. Sutkus had only 50 rounds. The German line was 2.5 miles away, no reinforcements, no retreat possible due to the Soviet encirclement. His mission: delay the enemy offensive for as long as possible. How long can a single man hold up an army? Sutkus would provide the answer, not through firepower, but through something far more potent: fear. Bruno Sutkus was no ordinary sniper. From August to December 1943, he had trained at the Vilnius Sniper School. Not just marksmanship, psychological warfare. The instructors taught a brutal truth: a dead enemy stops one man, a wounded enemy, screaming, bleeding, stops 5. An invisible shooter taking out commanders like a ghost stops hundreds. Sutkus's Karabiner 98K with its Zeiss ZF-42 scope wasn't just a weapon. It was an instrument of paralysis. Every shot had to count, not just hit, but destroy. Morale, chain of command, fighting spirit. The Soviets before him didn't know they were already defeated. They just didn't know why yet. 04:23 a.m. day 1. Petrov's body still twitched on the ground. The Soviet soldiers instinctively ducked for cover. Volkov shouted orders, but no one moved. Sutkus waited. 7 minutes, 8 minutes. The human mind can only endure so much tension. At minute 11, a young lieutenant, Michael Sokolov, dared to raise his head to survey the position. 04:34 a.m. Second shot. Sokolov fell backward, his right side of his face missing. Not instantly dead. 6 minutes of agonizing death. Volkov heard every breath over the radio. This is the moment the sniper instructors called the psychological cascade. One shot kills a man. The death throes kill the will of 30. The tactics were coldly calculated. German snipers on the Eastern Front had perfected a doctrine: priority targets, not shooting indiscriminately. Commanders first, then machine gunners, then radio operators, then medics attempting to recover the wounded. Every shot a message: no one is safe, no role protects you. Movement means death. Sutkus knew this doctrine by heart, but he added his own refinement: time intervals, unpredictable. 11 minutes, then 23 minutes, then 7 minutes, then 40 minutes. The human mind needs patterns to manage fear. Sutkus denied any pattern. Pure, uncontrollable uncertainty. 09:47 a.m. day 1. Volkov had lost 3 men in 5 hours. Only 3, but his company was paralyzed. No assault, no reconnaissance, complete immobility. He radioed regiment, enemy sniper nest of unknown size, blocking advance, requesting artillery support. The response was sobering. No artillery available. All guns supporting main attack 7.5 miles south. Eliminate it yourself. Volkov stared at the message. How do you eliminate a ghost? He had 287 men, now 284, against maybe 5, maybe 10 German snipers in the ruins. He couldn't know that the truth was far more brutal. A single 19-year-old with 47 rounds remaining. Soviet doctrine for counter-sniper operations was clear. Decoy figures, stuffed uniforms on sticks, observers looking for muzzle flashes, counter-fire with machine guns. Volkov ordered the setup, 14-22 hours. 4 decoys were raised from cover. Sutkus watched through his scope, smiled. This tactic was in the textbook, page 47, Vilnius Sniper School. Countermeasure: ignore decoys completely. Focus on observers waiting for muzzle flashes. 14-29 hours. A Soviet soldier, Corporal Andrew Volkov, brother of the captain, rose 1 inch too high behind an overturned cart. He was holding binoculars. Third shot. Andrew Volkov slumped to the ground, neck shot, trachea severed. Gurgling sounds for 4 minutes. Captain Volkov heard his brother dying over 95 yards. Could do nothing. Sutkus had not only eliminated an observer, he had psychologically destroyed the commander. Herein lies the power of sniper warfare, not just in kill counts. Matthew Hetzenauer, Austrian sniper, achieved 345 confirmed kills. Joseph Allerberger, 257. Sutkus himself would end the war with 209. But these numbers don't tell the whole story. A sniper with 300 kills has killed 300 enemies. But how many has he paralyzed? How many units dared not attack because they knew an invisible hunter lurked? How many offensives were called off because commanders were too valuable to risk? The Soviet army later estimated for every German sniper kill, an average of 47 Soviet soldiers were restricted in their movement. A multiplier effect. Sutkus, at this moment, was paralyzing almost 300, 1803 hours, day 1. Dusk. Volkov tried a new tactic, mass movement. 40 soldiers at once, different directions. Sniper can't hit them all. Logical. But Sutkus was trained by German instructors who exploited the Soviet mass assault mentality. He didn't aim at the 40 running soldiers. Too many targets, too little impact. He waited until they reached new cover. Then, in the moment of perceived safety, when fear subsides, 4th shot. Company radio operator Lieutenant Boris Dimitrov, head raised 2 seconds too long behind a tree stump. Skull shot. Instant death. But the psychological impact, Volkov lost communication with the regiment. Isolation. The radio operator wasn't a random target. Sutkus had systematically deconstructed the chain of command. Machine gunner, lieutenant, observer, radio operator. What comes next? The Hauptmann himself? Volkov didn't dare to move anymore. Night fell. Sutkus didn't leave his position. German sniper training emphasized change positions only when absolutely necessary. Any movement risks discovery. His position on the 2nd floor of a collapsed farmhouse gave a 240-degree field of vision. 3 escape routes through rubble, camouflaged with beams and snow. He had prepared the position 72 hours earlier. Covered entrances and exits, emergency rations, urine bottles to leave no odors. Professional snipers live in their positions like spiders in their webs. Sutkus was 19 years old, but he had the discipline of a veteran. No light, no noise, just observation. February 7th, 1944, 06:14 hours, day 2. Soviet reinforcements arrived. Major Grigory Zhukov, an experienced officer, 23 years of service. He was sent to reactivate Volkov's paralyzed company. Zhukov analyzed the situation quickly. 4 losses in 26 hours. Ridiculous. His instruction: aggressive advance, neutralize the sniper through overwhelming force. 09:30 hours, he started the attack. 80 men, 2 waves. Sutkus observed, counted. Waited. The first wave ran 60 meters, reached cover. Second wave advanced. At that moment, Major Zhukov rose to direct the second wave. Mistake. So 9 to 33 hours. Fifth shot. Zhukov fell. Lung shot. Not immediately fatal. Volkov watched in horror. The major, sent to rescue, lay gurgling 40 meters away. Any rescue attempt would mean further losses. Sutkus waited. Knew someone would try. So 9:51 hours. Medic Ivan Gregorov crawled out. Sixth shot. Gregorov, leg shot, femoral artery severed. Now 2 men lay screaming in the kill zone. Psychological trap perfect. Save them and die, or hear them die and lose morale. Volkov ordered. Nobody moves. Major Zhukov bled to death over 37 minutes. That's the reality of sniper warfare on the Eastern Front. Not heroic, not glorious. Cold, calculated, brutally efficient. German snipers like Allerberger later documented that they deliberately targeted stomachs to cause prolonged agony. Sutkus noted in his survival book that every shot had to not only kill, but teach. Lesson. Your commander can't protect you. Your equipment can't protect you. Your numbers can't protect you. Movement means death. This lesson, imprinted over dozens of hours, breaks units more effectively than artillery. 12:47 hours, day 2. Volkov now had 6 dead, 2 wounded unreachable. A major bled out. His company refused to move. Mutiny? No. Survival instinct. The men whispered among themselves. This isn't a normal sniper. This is the demon of Vitebsk. Nicknames arise quickly in wartime. Soviet soldiers, superstitious in extreme situations, began to attribute superhuman abilities to Sutkus. He sees through walls. He knows who officers are through mind reading. He can shoot in darkness. Volkov tried to stop the superstition, but fear is rational. 6 men dead, 9 shots fired, 0 enemy sightings. This isn't superstition. This is a nightmare. German snipers systematically used technical deception, dummy positions, stuffed uniforms with rifles installed that could be fired from a distance by wire. Sutkus had placed 3 such positions around his real nest. 15:22 hours. Soviet machine gunners opened fire on a suspected position 90 meters west. Fired 200 rounds into the dummy. Sutkus used the noise. 7th shot, new machine gunner, replacement for Petrov, Sergeant Nikolai Korsakov. Neck shot. Korsakov fell over his own machine gun. Instant death. But psychological message, counterfire is pointless. I'm not where you think, I'm everywhere. The science behind sniper anxiety is documented. U.S. Army Psychological Operations Studies 1947, based on Eastern Front interrogations, found soldiers under sniper threat show 340% increased cortisol levels, sleep deprivation even when no shots are fired, hypervigilance that leads to exhaustion in 36-48 hours. Volkov's men hadn't slept for 40 hours. Every noise was potential death. Every movement of a comrade was a possible trigger. Sutkus still had 43 rounds, but rounds were almost irrelevant now. The fear itself was the weapon. February 8, 1944, 03:22 hours, day 3. Volkov made a decision. Retreat. He couldn't. Orders were clear. Hold the position. Reinforcements are coming in 48 hours. But 48 hours under this invisible demon? Impossible. He radioed an encrypted message. Company combat ineffective due to enemy sniper presence. Request immediate withdrawal. The answer was devastating. Withdrawal denied. Hold. Commissar report filed for cowardice. Volkov read the message, understood. He was trapped between the sniper and execution by his own side. Sutkus observed the Soviet position through the dawn. Counted men. 278 remained. Minimal movement, no attacks, complete paralysis for 71 hours. At that moment, Sutkus realized something critical. He had won. His mission, delay the enemy offensive. Mission accomplished, but the German line was still 4 kilometers away. Soviet encirclement complete. Exfiltration impossible. Sutkus had a choice. Stay until ammunition ran out and then die, or try something never documented before. Psychological warfare to the absolute extreme. He wouldn't just stop the Soviets, he would break them. 06:47 hours, day 3. Sutkus began phase 2, 8th shot. Not at soldiers. At a water canister 12 meters from Soviet cover, canister exploded, water flowed out, nobody hurt. But message sent, I can destroy your supplies. An hour later, 9th shot. Food ration hit. Canned food exploded, psychological escalation. I don't just control your lives, I control your survival. Water, food, warmth, everything is under my invisible rule. Soviet soldiers began to whisper, he's playing with us. Volkov knew morale was collapsing. German sniper doctrine described this concept as dominance demonstration. Show the enemy that you can not only kill, but choose not to kill. That's more powerful than any kill. Sutkus had 41 rounds left. Could theoretically kill 41 more Soviets, but 41 dead out of 278 doesn't change anything numerically. 278 men psychologically destroyed changes everything tactically. Every non-lethal shot amplified the message. You live because I allow it, not because you are safe. 11:33 a.m. day 3. The Soviet company had now not launched an offensive for 72 hours. Regiment radioed Volkov. Status? Volkov answered honestly. Company incapacitated. Enemy sniper unit of unknown size has complete psychological control. 7 dead, 3 wounded, 0 tactical progress. The response from the regiment was silence. 40 minutes of silence. Then, message forwarded to division, awaiting instructions. Sutkus didn't know it. But his one-man operation now had attention at the division level. Thousands of Soviets were stalled because a 19-year-old Lithuanian understood the mathematics of fear. The historical irony is painful. The Soviet offensive on Vitebsk, February 1944, mobilized 300,000 soldiers. Losses, 135,012 men in 40 days. They failed to capture Vitebsk against the German 3rd Panzer Army. But here, a single German soldier held up 300 Soviet soldiers with fewer than 10 shots. The ratio is absurd, but that is the power of precision over mass. Wehrmacht snipers understood this fundamentally. Quality of effect over quantity of fire. 2:55 p.m., day 3. Sutkus made a decision. He had fired 22 shots in 71 hours, 13 lethal, 9 psychological, ammunition remaining, 28 rounds. The German line was now 3.7 kilometers away after the Soviet retreat in other sectors. Still impossible to reach. But Sutkus was not a suicide soldier. He was a professional. Professionals survive. He began the systematic final phase. Exfiltration through dominance, 10th shot, 3:14 p.m. Soviet sentry on the north perimeter. Headshot. Instant death, 11th shot, 3:19 p.m. Sentry on the east perimeter. 12th shot, 3:27 p.m. Sentry on the south perimeter. Message to Volkov. I control your perimeters. You are not hunters. You are encircled. The psychological impact was immediate. Soviet soldiers withdrew from the perimeters, afraid of exposure. Volkov realized in horror. The sniper is creating his own escape route, but Volkov could do nothing. Every order to occupy the perimeter was a death sentence. His company was no longer a unit. It was a collection of frightened men without collective function. Military cohesion had completely collapsed. 6:47 p.m., day 3, darkness. Sutkus packed his equipment, carabiner 98K, scope protected, sniper log with 196 kills now recorded. This operation would later serve as a case study. The 1944 German Sniper Manual Psychological Warfare section would describe Individual combatant Bruno Sutkus demonstrated that sniper effectiveness is not measured by kill count, but by enemy behavioral change. He left his position through the gap he himself had created through fear, exfiltration without pursuit. Why? Because 278 Soviet soldiers were too terrified to move. Sutkus reached German lines on February 9th at 2:34 a.m. His report was forwarded to regiment, then division, then army headquarters. The numbers were shocking in their efficiency. 23 shots fired, 13 confirmed kills, 300-plus enemy soldiers incapacitated for 72-plus hours, rounds used, 23 of 50, cost-benefit ratio. One German round neutralized an average of 13 Soviet soldiers for tactical purposes. This math was unprecedented. Hauptmann Müller, Sutkus's commander, submitted a recommendation for the sniper badge. It would be approved. But Sutkus himself later said in interrogations, the award was meaningless. The real success was that 278 men went home psychologically incapable of ever fighting effectively again. Volkov's company was withdrawn on February 11th and replaced official reason. Combat ineffectiveness due to exhaustion, unofficial reason. Psychological breakdown due to a single enemy sniper. Soviet after-action reports released in 1991 after the collapse of the Soviet Union reveal brutal details. Interviews with survivors describe nightmares years after the war. One said, "I survived Stalingrad, I survived Kursk, but the 3 days with the invisible German, that was my horror, because I knew he decided whether I lived. Not me, not luck, he did." But who was Bruno Sutkus really? Born May 14, 1924, in Lithuania, recruited into the Wehrmacht in 1943 during the German occupation, not a Nazi, not an ideologue. A young man caught in impossible circumstances who survived through ability. After the war, arrested by the KGB. Tortured, deported to Siberia. Why? Because Soviet intelligence reports had identified him as the demon of Vitebsk, revenge by proxy. Sutkus survived the Gulag, wrote an autobiography, Sniper Ace, from the Eastern Front to Siberia. Died August 29, 2003, at 79 years old, one of the last living members of a war generation. What distinguished German snipers from other nations? Training. Soviet snipers, made famous by Vasily Zaitsev, focused on kill count. American snipers on distance, British on patience, German focused on psychological impact. Every shot was calculated for maximum moral damage. That is why German aces like Hetzenauer with 345, Allerberger with 257, Sutkus with 209 kills achieved those numbers, but their real impact was unmeasurable through units that never attacked out of fear. The sniper badge that Sutkus received had 3 levels. Level 1, 20 confirmed kills. Level 2, 40 kills. Level 3, 60 kills. Sutkus reached level 3 in November 1944 with over 200 kills, but the badge did not measure psychological victories. It did not measure operations like Vitebsk, where 23 rounds destroyed a company. That is the hidden story of German sniper warfare. Statistics tell 30% of the truth. The remaining 70% is buried in Soviet war diaries, describing units that refuse to advance because of a single invisible enemy. Technical equipment was critical. Sutkus's Karabiner 98K, a Mauser design, was not technically superior to the Soviet Mosin Nagant, but the Zeiss Zekef 42 scope was. Clarity, magnification, durability in extreme temperatures. Vitebsk in February, -18 degrees Celsius. Soviet optics often froze. German Zeiss lenses, lubricated with special oils, functioned. That meant Sutkus could shoot at twilight when Soviet snipers were blind. Technology is often the difference between success and death. But technology without tactics is worthless. Sutkus's real weapon was patience. German snipers spent an average of 90% of their time observing, 10% shooting. Soviet doctrine was the opposite. Aggressive fire, high ammunition usage. Sutkus fired 23 shots in 72 hours, an average of 1 shot every 3.13 hours. In between, observation, analysis, planning. Each shot was the product of hours of preparation. This is craftsmanship, not mass production. The Vitebsk operation had long-term consequences. The Soviet offensive in February 1944 failed in part because dozens of these German sniper nests paralyzed the forward movement. Each nest, perhaps 1 to 3 men, stopped companies. 50 such nests could stop a division. The Wehrmacht used this tactic systematically during the retreats of 1943-1944. 4 to 6 snipers acting as a rear guard, delaying the Soviet advance for hours while the main forces retreated. Sutkus was one of thousands, but his operation was a textbook example of why the tactic worked. Here's the brutal math. The Soviet Vitebsk offensive involved 300,000 soldiers and resulted in 135,012 casualties in 40 days. It failed to capture the city. The German defenders, estimated at 40,000 soldiers initially, suffered 23,000 casualties, but they prevented a Soviet breakthrough. The ratio seems bad for the German, but strategically, every day of delay allowed the Wehrmacht to build defensive lines further west. Snipers like Sutkus bought those days, not through heroism, but through cold, calculated killing that created a fear that was more tactical than numbers. Post-war analysis by the US Army Staff College examined German sniper effectiveness. It found that the average German sniper caused 15 enemy deaths, but also caused an average of 200 hours of enemy movement restriction. That means the true value wasn't the killing, it was time. Time for retreats, time for reinforcements, time for civilians to evacuate. Every hour was bought with blood, but blood efficiently shed through precision. Bruno Sutkus, after the war ended, was interrogated by the Soviet NKVD. They wanted to know, how many did you kill? Sutkus answered honestly, my book shows 209 confirmed kills, but the truth, I don't know. Confirmed kill means an observer verified it. How many fell later? How many died from wounds, days after my shot? Impossible to know. The NKVD officer wrote in a report, subject shows no remorse, shows professional detachment, psychological profile, a professional killer without ideological motivation, dangerous even without war, recommendation, maximum internment. That's the tragedy. Sutkus was no monster. He was a soldier who did what soldiers do, survive by killing in the most professional form possible. But post-war societies can't integrate soldiers like him. He was too efficient, too cold, too reminiscent of the horror. So, deport, forget, hope he disappears. But Sutkus wrote his book, made sure his story didn't disappear. Because history, as painful as it is, must be remembered in order to prevent future horrors. His autobiography, published in 1998, sold few copies. Why? Because it wasn't heroic. It was honest. He didn't describe glory. He described coldness, loneliness, fear even in the killing. He wrote, every time I pulled the trigger, I thought, that's a father, a brother, a son. But then I thought he would kill me if he could, so I kill first. That's war, not good versus evil, survival versus survival. No side is noble in the moment of killing. Modern military tactics instructors study Sutkus's operations, not to glorify killing, but to understand efficiency. Every military academy worldwide teaches sniper psychology now, based on Eastern Front lessons. The core lesson: fear is more powerful than fire. An invisible enemy who kills precisely creates more tactical disruption than a visible army that shoots randomly. Sutkus demonstrated that perfectly. When we discuss German sniper aces today, numbers dominate the conversation. Hetzenauer, 345, Allerberger, 257, Sutkus, 209. But these numbers are almost meaningless without context. Hetzenauer operated mainly in 1944 against demoralized retreats. Allerberger in 1943-1944, mixed conditions. Sutkus, 1943-1945, through defensive withdrawal operations. Each kill was under different stress conditions. Comparing is like comparing apples to grenades. They all killed, but how and why differed massively. The last question: was Sutkus's Vitebsk operation ethical? Military ethicists debate that. One side argues he was a soldier under orders, using legally authorized tactics against enemy combatants. The other side, he used psychological torture, forcing men to choose between letting comrades die or dying themselves. Both sides have points. But the reality is, war isn't ethical. War is survival. Sutkus survived. 278 Soviets also survived, but were broken. Is that better or worse than killing them? Philosophy has no answer. Only history has facts. The facts: 23 bullets, 72 hours, 300 enemies paralyzed. One German operation delayed the Soviet advance for 3 critical days. Vitebsk held until June 1944. 4 additional months of German control allowed thousands of civilians to evacuate before the Soviet conquest. How many lives were saved as a result? Unknown. But Sutkus's operation was a tiny cog in a massive machine that produced complex results. Bruno Sutkus, if you could listen to him today, would say, "I was no hero. I was a craftsman of death. I perfected my craft because the alternative was to die." Every soldier does the same. Some with rifles, some with tanks, some with airplanes. I did it with single, precise shots because that was my assigned role. Don't glorify me. Learn from me. Learn that war is a hell machine that turns the best people into efficient killers, and then prevent future wars. The German sniper tradition didn't end in 1945. The Bundeswehr, after 1955, built a sniper program based on Eastern Front lessons, but with modern ethical boundaries. The focus shifted from psychological destruction to precise target neutralization. Modern snipers kill with equal precision, but doctrine forbids tactics like using the wounded as psychological weapons. The laws of war evolved, but the basic principle remains: precision over mass. Today, at the Bundeswehr Sniper School in Hammelburg, there's a memorial. Not for Sutkus specifically, for all snipers of both sides of all wars. The inscription reads, "They killed from a distance so that others might survive." A complicated homage, acknowledging effectiveness, but also mourning the necessity of such men existing. Sutkus visited in 2001, 2 years before his death, stood before the memorial and wept. A journalist asked why. Sutkus said, "I don't weep for myself. I weep for the 209 men I killed, and for the thousands who were psychologically destroyed. They had families, dreams. I took that away. War took that away. I was just an instrument." That's the deepest truth about snipers. They aren't monsters. They're humans who did an inhuman task extremely well. That doesn't make them evil, but it doesn't make them good either. It makes them tragic, trapped between ability and morality. Sutkus carried that until his last day. His autobiography ends with the sentence, "If there is a God, I hope he understands I had no choice." If there is no God, then I died inside with every trigger pull. Both possibilities mean I am already in hell. The story of Bruno Sutkus and the Vitebsk operation isn't one of triumph. It's one of survival through mastery of death. 300 soldiers paralyzed for 72 hours. 23 shots. 9 dead instantly. 4 bled out later. 10 psychologically destroyed for life. That's the balance sheet, and not a statistic. Human costs aren't countable in simple numbers. They are carried in the souls of both sides. German military history is full of such stories. Otto Carius, 150+ tanks destroyed. Michael Wittmann, 138 enemy vehicles. Erich Hartmann, 352 aerial victories. Numbers that seem impossible, but all true, all documented. But behind every number, human drama, fear, courage, despair, genius, tragedy. That's what makes these stories valuable to study, not to glorify war, but to understand humanity in the most inhuman circumstances. If you have family who fought in war, share their stories. Not just heroic deeds, also pain, also doubt, also trauma. Complete stories preserve truth. Partial stories create myths. Myths enable future wars because they hide the horror. Full truth, as painful as it is the best inoculation against war. Bruno Sutkus is now history. Vitebsk is now a quiet Belarusian city. The ruins where he lay for 72 hours have been rebuilt. No memorial plaques mark where 278 Soviet soldiers psychologically broke. No tourists visit, but the lessons remain, documented in military archives worldwide, studied by tacticians, remembered by the last survivors. And now, through this video shared with you, these aren't just statistics from dusty archives. These are moments that decided the fate of millions. Real soldiers, real fear, real consequences. These stories must never be forgotten. If these historical truths are important to you, then support with YouTube's Super Thanks, the golden heart below. Every Super Thanks enables me to spend weeks in archives, to digitize rare documents, to interview the last eyewitnesses. Help me preserve this history for future generations. What impressed you the most? Many viewers have shared incredible family stories. Grandfathers who were there, letters found in attics, war diaries that survived generations. Share your family history from this time below. Every comment is a piece of history that we preserve together. The voices are fading, but memories must live on through us.